Ford, there is no way Canada or any other country Trump targets could avoid tariffs on April 2nd. Joining me now, Kelly Geraldine Malone, Washington correspondent with the Canadian Press. It is an independent news agency. Kelly, welcome. I'm curious what you're hearing about that meeting and the reason for Ford's apparent shift in tone. Are Canadian officials, are they holding their breath for April 2nd to see which tariffs Trump ultimately settles on?
Obviously, Ford came out of that meeting quite positive in how he was talking, bringing up a lot of the talking points of, families argue. But it was really clear that the meeting wasn't going to bring any change to Trump's plan to slap Canada with different levels of tariffs. What Canadian officials later said was they really sat down and went through Donald Trump's trade agenda that he signed January 20th, which is all these reports that are going to come out April 2nd about how to deal with trade around the world with these reciprocal tariffs. And it kind of took them through each part of that and how it would impact Canada. And so Canadian officials say, it's pretty clear that he remains committed to this tariff agenda. And there's obviously different levels of ones that are targeting Canada because you have the fentanyl related ones. And then the reciprocal tariff ones that are April 2nd, and then the ones that are currently on Canada, which is steel and aluminum. So I think Canadians are just looking for answers. That's kind of what officials in that meeting told me. And how they're walking out a bit more positive is at least now, after they were able to sit down with Jameson Greer, the new USTR, they're able to see a bit of the strategy while it felt like before they were just flailing.
I'm curious if Canadians, did they expect this tit for tat earlier this week? When Ford announced that 25% surcharge on electricity exports, Trump clapped back with the 50% tariffs, the ones you mentioned there on Canadian steel and aluminum, and declared a national electricity emergency. I mean, were they worried it would spiral out of control?
I think there was concern from different levels. There's been different kinds of responses. So we have a federal government response. Those are retaliatory tariffs that came into place after Trump first hit Canada with tariffs. And those are targeted to specific industries. So, Kentucky bourbon, things like that, that are trying to get a message across to specific states. Those were partially walked back. And then obviously the steel and aluminum were coming, and Ford said he was going to go ahead with this electricity surcharge to 3 American states. And they're, behind closed doors in different provinces, because he's a provincial leader, so he can make his own kind of choice about how a province will respond. I heard from other provincial leaders who were saying, this could escalate things, which is why maybe they aren't seeing the same thing across the country. I don't think anyone was surprised that it escalated things. And the question is whether Ford did that to get Trump's attention so he could get this meeting. That's some things that people are questioning in Canada.
And look, NBC reports that Trump's quest to conquer Canada, that's confusing everyone. Here's Trump this week in a response from Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney. Take a listen.
To be honest with you, Canada only works as a state. It doesn't. We don't need anything they have. As a state, it would be one of the great states anyway. This would be the most incredible country visually.
It's crazy. His point is crazy. That's it. We will never, ever, in any way, shape, or form, be part of the United States.
Give me a sense of just the big picture, how Canadians feel about Trump's 51st state rhetoric. I mean, are they clear why Trump keeps pushing this and what specific Trump demand is Canada still not meeting?
I don't know if Americans fully understand how angry Canadians are right now from coast to coast. Like, it is a sense of betrayal. There's confusion. The U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement was signed in 2018, negotiated by Donald Trump, declared by President Trump the best trade deal ever. They recognize that fentanyl is an issue in Canada. Fentanyl is an issue, but generally it is a domestic supply causing the problem, and less than 1% of fentanyl seized going across the border comes from Canada. I've reached out to the DEA asking for any evidence, being that their latest risk assessment report didn't even mention Canada in it, and they pointed me to the White House. I reached out to the RCMP, the National Police Force in Canada, being like, where's the evidence of any of this? And they said, fentanyl's a problem, we want to deal with it, but we have no evidence to show large-scale movement of fentanyl from Canada to the U.S. In fact, there's more drugs moving from the U.S. into Canada. So there's a general sense of confusion among Canadians about, with everything going on in the globe, why the United States has decided to really target Canada. And I will say that federal officials in Canada are telling Canadians that Trump's team is telling them that his goal is to economically crush Canada in order to annex it. So that is the rhetoric that's going across Canada, is that they are taking these threats seriously and they don't find this funny. They don't see it as a joke.
Yeah. So Premier Doug Ford engages in a level of theatrical flair in his pushback against Trump, appearing on Fox and clearing U.S. liquors off Canadian store shelves, as you mentioned, the whiskey in particular. His campaign manager once said he speaks the language of Trump voters. How is he different from Carney, of course, Canada's new prime minister? And who would you say is better suited to negotiate with the Trump administration?
I won't weigh in on who's better suited, but I will say that they are fundamentally different politicians in almost every way possible. Whether or not it's their political history or how they speak or, how they address things. So Ford is a pretty legendary Ontario politician. He had a radio show where he'd go on and take questions. He hands everybody his cell phone number and is like, call me anytime. He was a big Trump supporter, as he mentioned in the clip you played. He was screaming loud and proud. Mark Carney is, this is his first foray into elected politics. And he was with the Bank of England from 2013 to 2020. Prior to that, he was the governor of the Bank of Canada from 2008 to 2013. So during that financial crisis, and he worked with Goldman Sachs. He has worked behind the scenes being an advisor to governments, but this will be his first time coming in. He's much more of a, even toned on maybe message politician. And Doug Ford is a bit more of, I'm trying to choose my words correctly, but a spectacle politician who is going to come out and say big threats and threaten to cut off electricity. I think you'll see a much more even-toned approach from Carney. And Carney said he has met Trump previously at different forums in his time as governor, Bank of Canada and Bank of England.
I got to say, I do appreciate the way you're very carefully choosing your words. I get it. Trust me. Kelly Geraldine Malone, it's very good to see you. Thank you so much. A deadly weather situation is on the move.